Right. Movie reviews. So, I just saw Star Wars. Let's go this way. Alright. There we go. Star Wars. Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Just saw it. Gonna review it. And we'll just go from there. Alright. First impressions. Alright. A couple of things about this movie. One, right off the bat, this was a very good movie. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And because it keeps coming up in conversation, comparing it to not the original trilogy of movies, but rather the prequel films. And it's worth actually talking about that a little bit, simply because what I hate about the prequels were the number of things that were done so wrong that, comparing it to this one, or more to the point, contrasting it, were done very, very right. But let's go into that. That's a long-ass thing. I'm going to just be futzing with this like non-stop forever. My own little rolling a boulder uphill in hell. Alright. Briefly, on our way there, we actually got out and saw the very first show of the day. We're not, as a group, inclined to go to the midnight showing, so we usually go early in the morning the next day. It just, some of us work third shift or late second, and it just works easy. It's easier that way. But I have to have coffee, and there wasn't time, so I grabbed a Frappuccino out of the refrigerator, but I put it too close to the cooling element, and it froze solid. Like when I needed it most, my coffee failed. It's not usually something I expect from coffee, like a coffee failure, a coffee-related failure. Like I had that specifically there, so I desperately need coffee because I'm me, and I'm an addict, and I need to have it. I fucking need to have it. And it wasn't there, so I'm like, I'll just grab the one that's in there, go off on my merry winsome way. So I'm in the car, which is freezing cold, popping it open and noticing I have a frozen coffee. I'm like trying to tongue the coffee. It was very embarrassing and bad. I'm sitting there shaking it, trying desperately to turn it into a slushie. So that was my fun experience.
Very good.
Good cat. Alright, one thing I wanted to start off with, like right out of the gate, I wanted to pull this up. Damn it. Was Gareth, I want to get his name right, Gareth Edwards and Greg Fraser. Gareth Edwards is the director behind this movie, and I mentioned earlier, contrast between this and the prequel films. Holy shit, the directing. No spoilers. This will be a fully non-spoiler review of this movie. But there are a couple scenes that are beautiful. Like, blink and you'll miss them. They're short. Some of them are very unsubtle, but they're great. The original Star Wars had a lot of scenes where it was like a metaphor, like a metaphor. The opening scene in Star Wars, I've heard, I think Red Letter Media made a point about it, where here's the rebel ship, here's the Star Destroyer, and everything about it. Tiny ship, big imposing ship. Tiny ship that's literally overshadowed. It tells you what informs. Visually, this tells us if we're watching a movie, we don't have time, nor should we have someone just sit there and give exposition for hours at a time. That's a failure of a movie. When you can do so visually and quickly. And that original scene in Star Wars did so very well. this Star Wars movie, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, Star Wars Tale or whatever, A Star Wars Story, does this frequently, where one scene that, once again, no spoilers, but there is this one scene where the antagonist of this film is sitting there waiting around for Darth Vader. You knew Darth Vader was in it. You saw the commercials. He's waiting around for Darth Vader, and this beautifully lit scene. I mean, here he is, the antagonist. He's this big, high-ranking guy in the Empire. He's a powerful man in a uniform, and then in the background behind him, from where the shot is, you have this door opening up from the bottom down, because that's how doors work in Star Wars. And as it is, there's a great deal of light behind it for no good reason, and there's Darth Vader, and then we reverse shot back to the guy, and here he is, big, tall man in a uniform, but then this shadow falls over him where he's literally in Darth Vader's shadow, and that shadow is twice as tall as him. Clever. Not subtle, but very clever and beautiful. This movie is gorgeous to look at. This movie actually has a lot to talk about. Just briefly, the director, Gareth Edwards, because I keep forgetting his name, because I don't really know the guy. From what I understand, he got to start in digital editing. Like, he's a special effects guy. And this movie shows he does a really good job of integrating the special effects to the rest of the film. The thing I saw was Godzilla. He was a director for Godzilla. I can't help notice he doesn't have, as near as I can tell, he has 3 other directing credits to his name. And I don't know what End Day and Monsters are. So Godzilla was the one I saw, and I thought it was well directed. For an effects film. He's an effects guy, that's his background. He was a good choice. He did an excellent job. I very much liked the directing in this film, as opposed to the prequel films where I absolutely hated the directing. I also wanted to kind of shout out to Greg Edwards, who is a cinematographer. Like I said, this film's beautiful. It's very lovely. It's pretty when it can be pretty. You saw the scenes from the commercials where you have rebels and stormtroopers and the AT-ATs going through this tropical setting, and they look great. And the whole scene, it's very indicative of those scenes. They look fantastic. It's very well directed. The story is complex and engaging. None of this bullshit like in Episode 1, the prequel film, Phantom Menace, where we have long stretches of, there's a trade thing going on, and there's stuff, and here we are drinking tea. This one just grabs you right out of the gate. Does a very good job of it. It's engaging right from the start, and it tells the story succinctly and well, and if there's anything in the beginning that you didn't understand, it fills in the blanks cleanly throughout the film. It doesn't it's explaining an awful lot. There's a lot of complicated ideas going on, and because of the way movies are made, even though it is ridiculous that someone would go to see this movie who's not aware of what Star Wars is, but they kind of have to assume that that's who would be in the audience, so they have to explain everything. And they do a fine job. They do an excellent job. There's nothing that's unexplained. That said, if you're a hardcore Star Wars fanatic, there's lots of stuff to love. There's shout-outs to everything. Like stuff, once again, no spoilers, keep your eyes open. There's a lot of good stuff there to see. I liked all the characters. Every character that we were introduced to was complex enough that they were interesting. I mean, they were weird. Once again, I'm going back to the prequels, where you had characters who were weird or complex, not both. The complex characters were boring. The weird characters were just goofy. Jar Jar Binks comes to mind. Jar Jar Binks is weird, not complex. Queen Amidala is complex, but very boring. See what I mean? These characters have complexity to them. All of them have a backstory where even the little bit of information you have about them tells you a lot. They clearly have they clearly lots of shit has happened to them prior to them jumping on screen. But there's also the implication that there's a lot more you don't know that's equally complex and interesting. And they're different enough from each other. It's not like, oh, that was scraggly bearded guy number 3. You know, who is this? I forget his name. Other stuff I liked. The technology, the integration into the original series was very, very good. There's an eye to it, but it doesn't feel forced like it did in the prequel movies. Notice how that's why I right out of the gate I mentioned I can't help contrasting this, because both of them are Star Wars, but one of which reminded me a lot of how this movie just reminded me of all the bad stuff from the prequels, because it did all that stuff well. Everything that stands out as being horrible in the prequels is done fabulously here. That said, if you like the prequels, you'll like this too. It has a lot of good call-outs to it. I mean, this is theoretically the film that bridges Revenge of the Sith with, I guess they're calling it A New Hope. In my mind, it's still the Star Wars movie. That was what its title was, Star Wars. It wasn't Star Wars A New Hope. 1977? I liked the vast majority of the construction of this film, the film as a whole. I liked the story, and I was entertained for the entire length. Didn't feel long, although that was definitely a longer movie, wasn't it? 133 minutes. That was a longer film. 2 hours and 13 minutes. Didn't feel like it, and that's always good. That's very good. So, too much about this film, because the things I don't like were necessary evils. This was the movie in between Star Wars, is what I'm going to call it, and Revenge of the Sith. And no spoilers. Can't stress that enough. But we do see, obviously, a lot of characters who were in the 1977 movie Star Wars. Gah! What are you doing? Okay. Cat. Alright. So, here's the thing. They have to do CG. You know it. You knew it was coming. And they did a fabulous job, but it falls into that uncanny valley a little. It doesn't fall into it. It dips into it just a bit here and there. And it's a little off-putting. It's what it is. I mean, they just can't, you know, how do you get around it? Do you just have scenes where it's like, oh, that character from 1977, they just went around the corner. You just missed them. Darn. I'll go send the thing to them some other way. Or something like that. You know, some convoluted thing so you don't have to show on screen a character from an actor who's either much older or even not alive anymore. And not everyone was in like 10 layers of makeup, so you can just throw another actor in there. It just is only so much you can do. I'm going to figure out a way to drink this somehow. Oh well. Let's not prevaricate. Get on to the review portion, the rating portion, I guess. What are the odds you're going to see this and not like it? Very low. I mean, I'm trying to think who would not like this and what about it they wouldn't like. Someone who never saw Star Wars, had no idea what it was, you know, came in from an alternate universe where Star Wars didn't exist, was plopped into a seat and watched this movie, would think it was amazing. It's like, wow, this is just a well-constructed, good story. It's a good movie. If there are any plot holes, they aren't big, and they aren't glaring. So there's that. None of that. What are the odds you'll see it and not like it? Less than 1 in 20. I think this movie has the potential to break some records. I don't know if it is, but I think it could. I think it very easily could. It's God, there's so much I want to say that's spoilerish. The ending in particular. I think this movie could travel well. What I mean by that is some American films don't do as well overseas, or some movies do much better overseas than they do domestically. This one I think is going to do very well domestically. I could really see this catching on. Less than 1 in 20. Less than 1 in 20. Like a 5% chance you're going to see this and be so annoyed you didn't like it. I think, like, even the complaints about the episode 7 aren't here. They're just not here. So it's, there's nothing here not to like. I'm curious to see someone criticize this movie, because I can't think of, what did you see in this film that I didn't hear? So yes, 1 in 20 chance you're going to see it and not like it at best. Do I want to see this movie again? Yes, I want to see this movie again. I literally want to see this movie again immediately. Like, if I could see it again this afternoon, I would. I wouldn't mind. It's a long movie. It is. It's 2 hours and 13 minutes long, as I mentioned. And there's a lot going on. There's not filler in this film. There is no filler. If there's any filler, I can't think of a single moment of it. So throughout the entire film, it's there's either dialogue explaining what's happening, showing us what these characters are like and what they can do. There is some establishing, but it's used well. It's none of that padding out or establishing to expand a short scene or any of that bullshit. That's not here at all. So yeah, I would see it again. I'd recommend seeing it actually more than once, simply because it's so long and they have so many characters, and the characters are interesting, and there's a lot happening. It's worth seeing twice. This movie could really... I liked Episode 7 a lot, but I think this is actually better than Episode 7. And I could go into that, but I can't, because that is so spoiler. It's spoiler crazy. But yeah, I'm just going to end on that. I recommend seeing this movie. I recommend it a lot. I really like it. It has a lot of the elements that I could see this doing extremely well and breaking a whole bunch of damn records, more than Episode 7. That's me. I think I'm out. If you're inclined, like and subscribe.